What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Phoenix Blade Entertainment, where we bring you content on the many comics, anime, TV shows, and movies out in the world from today, yesterday, and tomorrow. I'm your host, Phoenix, and today we'll be talking a lot about the gigantic mess that is the DC movie universe, or the DC Extended Universe, or Worlds of DC, or the dumpster fire at Warner Brothers, is what I call it. Whatever it's called, it hasn't been going well over at Warner Brothers. With the MCU already up and running, Warner Brothers tried to scramble to make the same magic on their side with a few shortcuts. Unfortunately, when you try to make the Krabby Patty without the Krabby Patty formula, you get the chum bucket. However, DC may have a way to get back on the horse and put themselves in a position that Marvel hasn't capitalized on yet. And it's the push that these films need right now in order to compete. The DCEU hasn't pushed out too many gems so far, but with this film, a whole slew of possibilities can be opened. So, without further ado, let's get to the bottom of why The Flash is going to be the most important DC movie. To say that WB's approach to this movie universe didn't pan out well would be an understatement. With the success of the Avengers solidifying its shared universe concept, the MCU was in full swing, bringing in loads at the box office, and the minds at WB quickly worked to push out their own universe and compete. Unfortunately, the company took the route of building a house without the support beams, and it ended up falling apart in their face. The solo movies have worked fine so far, but the slight issue with them is that they don't do much to expand the universe as a whole, if there even is one still. Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Shazam don't seem to connect much with the overall universe, and that's fine. I think DC does better going solo. However, if we're going to go down that path, DC is going to have to become comfortable with letting writers and directors tell whatever story they want to tell, no matter what character is involved. Right now, it can't happen with the company being scared to produce multiple versions of one character, which is why the Flash movie is going to be a big step up when it blows up with the DC Multiverse. If you don't know what the Multiverse Theory is, it's the idea that for every decision you make, or event that takes place, there is another universe out there that exists where you choose something different. Say for example, you dated Alexis instead of Samantha on this earth and had a wonderful life with beautiful children. There might be another earth out there where you did the opposite and you dated Samantha and you had the worst possible divorce in the history of mankind. There are infinite possibilities, which means there are infinite realities related to those events. The comics have never shied away from bringing that concept onto the page. In fact, DC was the first to introduce the concept in 1961 in the Flash number 123, appropriately named A Flash of Two Worlds. In order to keep the Golden Age characters of old and still bring in the Silver Age characters, DC came up with the idea of having the older characters exist on another Earth similar to ours. Yes, it certainly caused convoluted plot lines and messed up timelines, but that was when it was beginning, and it's been a half dozen decades since then. There's no excuse to not take a chance on this interesting idea, especially when the TV side has gone to great lengths to show that it can be done. No one's going to argue that the Arrowverse is the peak of television, and it definitely has more downs than ups recently, but there's no denying that the CW shows have captured a shared universe that works infinitely better than the one on the big screen. Greg Berlanti, Mark Guggenheim, and the rest of the crew working on this understand the fundamentals that need to be laid down in order for crossovers to work. A whole season of Arrow aired before the Flash was even a factor. Then they started with smaller crossovers on Flash and Arrow and introduced more shows, slowly integrating them into the larger universe, while also giving them their own identity. This process was slow and took patience, but it all eventually culminated into the mostly epic TV event that was Crisis on Infinite Earths. The people behind the Arrowverse have let their ideas run wild for years, because they want to have fun with the material and tell grand stories. And that's the problem with Worlds of DC. Or Worlds of DC, I can't remember. They're not letting the creators come in and tell their own story with their own imprint on it. In the past, WB has been too restricted to play with the strengths of their own universe, and the reasons behind it make little to no sense. This is something I brought up earlier, but the major issue in having the multiverse in live action is the fact that we would have multiple versions of characters on screen. Warner Brothers thinks that the idea of having two Superman in a film is too confusing for the casual fan, and they would rather avoid it. I find it crazy though because the Arrowverse has done this a lot, especially in Crisis on Infinite Earths. It's pretty easy to follow if explained correctly. They're also selective about keeping the major DC characters out of shows. Like, I get the deal with Jeremiah and Jerome because a Joker movie was in the works. Although both are clearly versions of the Joker, they're never called by that name. But it's different with the use of their prized possession Batman. Gotham and the Arrowverse can't actually use Batman because it'll tarnish your brand or whatever, but Titans can have one of the worst versions of Batman ever and it's all good. Despite all of that though, the minds of DC have been a bit more lenient with the idea of a shared universe across platforms. That's apparent with the appearances of different DC movie and TV show characters from the past and present, including a cameo from Ezra Miller. This all brings us to the Flash movie coming out in November of next year, directed by Andy Muschietti and written by Christiana Hassan, who also wrote Birds of Prey. The story is based on the comic Flashpoint and seems to be following the same sort of plot. It's going to take place in an alternate timeline where everything has gone to hell, and I'm really excited to see it on the screen, but that's not what this video is about. The main thing to take away here is the potential that this has for everything DC. For one, we're going to have multiple Batman on the screen, which is an achievement of itself, because they sure have shown how cautious they can be with one Batman. If they play the same role as they did in the book, that would be fine, but I'm hoping for something more for Affleck's version of the character, since he won't be getting his own movie anytime soon. The other implication that spurred this whole discussion is what happens at the end of the story. In the graphic novel, Barry tries to run back in town to try to fix what has happened, and in the process, he creates a whole new multiverse. He might be a far-fetched, but I believe that if and when this happens in the movie, it's going to fix every problem that I mentioned in this video. There's no better justification for this than the Ezra Miller cameo in the Batman movie that Matt Reeves is making. The first crossed the boundaries of the movie and TV universes, and the second is making another Batman on top of the two that we're already getting in the Flash movie. It indicates that DC has come away from trying to keep everything separate and clean and really diving into what can be done with their properties. The ending doesn't even have to do much work, because at the end of the Crisis on Infinite Earths TV event, the multiverse is already numbered and accounted for. All the Flash movie has to do is confirm that it's in this multiverse and make it a real thing so it can be recognized and used. At the end of the day, it won't be just this one universe with some movies that aren't related. It'll all be connected. It'll be more common for TV show characters and movie characters to cross over or mention the other. The networks won't have to be afraid of using the same character in two different places because a larger audience will understand the concept, so maybe we can have our own CW Green Lantern and CW Batman. On top of that, it'll leave the door open for more experimental movies on existing characters. You can have your Henry Cavill Superman movie and your dumb black Superman movie, while also having Red Sun Superman and Ultraman. When it's all said and done, it'll be an interconnectivity that Marvel doesn't even have yet. Marvel is fixated on having a central story with each movie contributing to that universe. It has worked great for them so far, but it keeps them from telling stories outside of continuity at the moment. Sure, you may see different versions of a character in Loki and other movies, but they're not going to get their own movie about what they went through. The MCU's strength is that it builds on the characters and relationships within it and pays them off later. That's why Infinity War and Endgame work so well. But this doesn't have to be the strength for the DC movies. Imagine letting the screenwriters fire off on all cylinders, bringing whatever to the table, and it all works because it's connected. DC is great at maintaining stories because they don't have to worry about setting up the next thing and the next thing and 3 movies after that. If it's done well, I can see this style of a shared universe performing on par with the MCU because of how many different things you can adapt and create. And in the end, maybe we'll get an even bigger, higher budget Crisis event on the big screen with so many characters that it makes Endgame look small. You could argue that Marvel has already beaten DC to the punch on a multiverse game. The success of Into the Spider-Verse is no short feat, and the MCU has even more to bring to the table in the coming years with the stuff that just happened in Loki. I won't spoil it, but go watch that, it's amazing. And definitely Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. However, you can't deny DC's skill when it comes to alternate reality stories. Some of their best work comes from elsewhere stories like Kingdom Come, Dark Knight Returns, and Gotham by Gaslight. And even stories involving the multiverse like Crisis on Infinite Earths, Multiversity, and Dark Knight's Metal. Marvel definitely has a plan up their sleeve, but I think that DC can push out a few gems out there and get the ball rolling to catch up to them. Now, if Marvel builds all this up to a Secret Wars event 2015 style, I'm sorry, it's over. It's basically over. You can't do nothing to that. There's nothing you can do at that point. Why even try? You lost. Good luck next time. It's over. If you made it all the way to the end, thanks for watching. I appreciate you staying through all this rambling I made. If you have any points you'd like to bring up, leave them down in the comments and I'll be sure to argue to death about them. If not, go ahead and comment anyway, like and subscribe, and I hope to see you back here soon.